Welcome in, welcome back to another episode of the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog, where I examine, discuss, celebrate, and honor all things college football across the entire college football landscape, but with a very special emphasis on our beloved black and gold squads of the Missouri Tigers and the Iowa Hawkeyes. Thanks once again. It's great to be back with you. I'm your usual host, Blair Parks. Holla at you, boy. And today I've got a very, very special episode for you today. Today marks the first of two, that's right, two, Sammy Sosa style, two of my preview and prediction episodes for the upcoming 2022 college football season. And by the way, the season is nigh. Next weekend, as I record and post this today, next weekend, next Saturday, is week 0. So the season is practically here, as the Grinch would say. So it's great to be back with you. So what's on tap for today? Since it is episode 1 of 2 of my big preview and predictions episode, I'm going to be breaking down 3 of the 5 power conferences today, starting from east to west. I'm going to start off previewing and predicting how I see the ACC going, and then right in the middle of the nation, I'll be doing the Big 12 preview and prediction, and then I will be finishing out west with the Pac-12 preview and predictions. So that's what's on tap today, and that's going to leave me plenty of time for next week's episode when I will finish up my preview and predictions of the Power 5 conferences for the SEC and the Big 10, the conferences from that within our beloved black and golds compete in. So I'm going to need a little extra time for those. But before I move any further, I need to, as always, say thank you for your support, the success of the channel. So please, from here out, I encourage any likes, shares, subscriptions, ratings, anything that'll keep the ball rolling. We are gathering a lot of momentum here on the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog, all thanks to you. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be here with you, sharing and discussing and talking about, my passion, my love of college football. Recently, views, likes, comments, everything is way up, but we definitely do need to get a few more subscribers. So please help me in spreading the word. If this is your first time with me today, what you see is what you get. I don't do any edits. I don't do any reshoots. I don't do any dress rehearsals. This is what you get. This is a passion, a love, a hobby for me. So if I had to do all of that in-depth work to edit or reshoot, it would be a job. And I've already got a legitimate job. This is just for fun. So this is what you're going to get. I kind of say that if you are a person, when you go to a rock concert, or any concert for that matter, like I do, well, primarily, especially pre-COVID anyway, that there's 2 concerts you could go see. You could go to a concert that has all of the great special effects, laser light shows, big projector screens, all of that. Very appealing to the eye. And I know right now this is not very appealing to the eyes, and I get that. So that's one type of show you might go see. But the other is what I prefer. I'll go to a 3-hour rock concert with very little to no effects, just good music in your face, a lot of passion, a lot of energy, good vocals, good audio, and that's what you're going to get at this channel. I don't do any special effects, nothing like that, so bear with me. If you do, I know you will be entertained. Just ask yourself at the end of the episode, are you not entertained? And this is not why you are here? And I'm sure it'll be a yes. So, as I always do, I always encourage comments, so let me know what you think, good, bad, ugly, agree, disagree. And I want to give some shout outs. Last week's episode, my Missouri Tigers preview and prediction show, that has been received very well. Lots of views, lots of comments, but especially want to give a shout out. thanks and a lot of gratitude to two individuals. We have, first of all, Robert Mitchell and Jay Robb. Thank you for all of your comments on that Missouri Tigers preview. Always welcomed, and let's keep that up. So thank you very much for your involvement, and I encourage any comments, and I am so very grateful for all of you, the Black and Gold family, and all of you college football fanatics alike. You are all welcome here. So, one thing I do want to add. 2 episodes ago, I did my favorite episode I've done every year, my bold predictions for the upcoming season. And I'm going to add one more bold prediction today because basically I can. It's my show, and I'll do what I want. I'm not going to take back any of those bold predictions because once they are said, so they shall be written, as Pharaoh said in 10 Commandments. So I am going to add one more. And I did allude to this during the Missouri Tiger preview and prediction episode, my last episode, that I do believe that Harrison Mevis, the thicker kicker at Missouri, I did mention I believe he will at least be a Lou Groza Award finalist, which goes annually to the best kicker in the nation. So I'm going to go all in on this. So number 27 for my bold predictions, and this is a 2-part prediction now, I am predicting that Harrison Mevis officially will be not only a Lou Groza Award finalist, but will capture the award, crowning him the nation's best kicker. I definitely think he's going to come through, especially early in the season when Missouri is working in a lot of those primarily young crop of receivers that they have and replacing do-everything running back Tyler Beatty. I think Missouri is going to really rely on his leg, that foot, to cash in on some drives that are potentially going to stall out as they get those individuals more reps and more playing experience. So Harrison Mevis, don't let me down. That's my number 27 bold prediction for the upcoming season. And at the end of the season, I will do an episode looking back on my bold predictions, and we'll go ahead and score myself to see how I did in front of you, the Black and Gold family. So today, just to give you a little bit of a sneak peek, so let's say the Pac-12, which is last of the 3 conferences I'm going to be previewing and predicting today. Stick around, you're going to like this, but for all of you and a lot of the individuals and so-called experts and fans, a lot of you are jumping on the USC bandwagon. I get it. You know, they were the winners of the offseason with Lincoln Riley being their new head coach. They hit the lottery numbers as far as the transfer portal. A lot of legitimate proven talent has transferred in to USC, but I don't see them being a legitimate conference finalist team. I don't think they're even going to potentially make the Pac-12 conference title game. So I also then do not believe they will not even be a legitimate playoff contender. But a lot of people do. And those people may end up being right. Maybe I'll be wrong. But I'm pretty sure about this. So for all of you who are on the USC bandwagon, I will talk about this here in a little bit more. But I think Mr. Hand from Fast Times at Ridgemont High said it the best by saying, all of you USC lovers, are you people on dope? That's what I think about USC and these high expectations in year 1 for Lincoln Riley. So there's a little preview of what's coming up later in the episode. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first conference up for today's episode is the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference. And I'm going to start off in the Atlantic Division, which I believe will be one of the 2, along with the Big Ten West Division, one of the 2 deepest divisions in college football. I mean, there is 4 teams that potentially could win this division, just like the Big Ten West, and there will be a sleeper. And I will give you the main teams that I think will compete in each of these divisions, and also a sleeper team, or more I like to call a chaos-causing surprise team that it's going to throw a wrench in the plans of some of the top dogs in these divisions and conferences. So in the Atlantic Division, this is how I see it playing out. I believe it is a 4-team race between, alphabetically, Clemson, Florida State, NC State, and Wake Forest. So let's start off with Clemson, and I'm going to reference the AP rankings, which just came out a couple days ago. Let's start off with number 4 Clemson, and I have these guys as a legitimate playoff contender. If you watched my bold predictions episode, and if you haven't yet, feel free to check it out. I do have Clemson making the college football playoff field. I do believe they will be one of the last 4 standing. So let's break down Clemson's strengths and weaknesses. I believe that Clemson is going to have a very vaunted, tough defensive front 7, and I believe that this front 7 at Clemson is going to be very Georgia-like from last year's front 7, which really was an NFL-style front 7. And I think the Clemson front 7, they could be one of, if not the best unit, period, in all of college football this coming season. I mean, this is a team that people forgot. Last year, yes, 3 losses during the regular season, but they lost to eventual national champion Georgia, basically due to a pick 6 by 1 score, and then also just had 1 really bad quarter at NC State, which cost them a victory. They could have very easily won the ACC and been in the playoff discussion. So this is a very good team, and I think this front 7 is going to be completely legit this season. I think they will rise up. We got to rise up, just like Hamilton said. The O-line, though, this is one of my issues. I think the O-line must perform. Last year, I mean, it was basically open the floodgates. I mean, quarterback who's returning this season, DJ Uyunglele, last year was primarily, yes, that's a mouthful. So DJ was primarily running for his life. That offensive line needs to tighten it up and perform this season. And will the real DJ Uyunglele please stand up? During the COVID year, we saw flashes of what he could be. I mean, great games, especially that instant classic at Notre Dame. But last year really struggled. But as I just mentioned, I think a lot of that came down to the poor performance of the offensive line. So DJ, you got to step up, buddy. You got to show me. I live here in the show me state, so show me what you got. And I do believe DJ could be a dark horse Heisman Trophy finalist, and he really is. But it depends on how that offensive line starts and ends this season. Now, via the schedule, they have a very challenging schedule to win the Atlantic Division. They host both NC State and Miami, who's one of the favorites to win the Coastal Division. And NC State is one of the favorites to challenge in the Atlantic. But they travel to Wake Forest, to Boston College, and Florida State. So they have a very tough schedule, tough treading to win the Atlantic Division. So next, let's move on to Florida State. And I think this is a team that is kind of flying under the radar a little bit, but I definitely think they could challenge the upper echelon in this division this season. Florida State returns 15 starters. It's a very pivotal 3rd year for Coach Mike Norvell, who, if things go awry this year in Tallahassee, he could find himself very quickly on one of the hottest seats in all of college football. Coming into the season, I think that seat is lukewarm. I think he's safe as of now, but let's see how the season unfolds there in Tallahassee. Via the schedule, when I look at the 4 teams I think who can compete, I believe they have the toughest road to a division crown. Florida State, they host Boston College, Wake Forest, and Clemson, but they travel to both NC State and Miami. Wow, that is tough sledding for the Florida State Seminoles, so we'll see how that plays out this season. Next is number 13 in the AP poll, the NC State, the Wolfpack. And they are one of my playoff contenders. I have them potentially one of the first teams out. You'll have to wait and see. So NC State, they have 17 returning starters. There is a lot of expectation, a lot of love for this team here preseason, but it's basically justified. This is going to be a very legitimate ball team. Their success, they're going to be riding the golden arm of returning quarterback Devin Leary, who threw for 3,433 yards last season, 35-5 as far as touchdown interception ratio. Excellent numbers. And their schedule, to me, is the easiest path to a division title. That being said, they do host Florida State, Wake Forest, and Boston College. But their toughest game, they do travel to Clemson to take on the Tigers in the Valley. So that is a tough, tough game. And at the end of the conference previews for each one of these, I failed to neglect, I will give you my conference games of the year, which will determine, I believe, who wins each division to advance to the conference title games. So that's the story on NC State. Man, tough sledding though. That's schedule though. It's compared to the others, very, very easy. I said the easiest path to a division title, but they've got to go to Clemson, as I stated. Number 22 in the AP poll is Wake Forest. Now, they had some very unfortunate news at the end of last season. Quarterback Sam Hartman, who had awesome numbers last year, is going to miss some legitimate time. They haven't said exactly how long due to a non-football related issue. So some sort of medical issue going on with quarterback Sam Hartman. I say to you, rest, recover, recoup. We want to get you back on the field as much as possible. But even without Sam Hartman playing, I still believe, because of how this offense schemes under Coach Dave Clawson, who is one of the most underrated, unknown, and unappreciated coaches in all of college football, and what they return on offense, this team could still make a lot of noise and compete for the Atlantic Coast title. Their calling card is going to be offense, and you guessed it, even more offense, even without Sam Hartman, as I stated. But the major issue I have with them is the opposite. Defense, defense, defense. They must improve on that side of the ball as a whole to be a legitimate contender in the ACC Atlantic. Via the schedule, overall a tough path to a division title. They do host Clemson and Boston College, but they travel to Florida State and NC State. So, not the toughest schedule, but still a tough schedule for the Demon Deacons of Wake Forest. Now, my potential chaos and surprise team, a team that really can up and bite a couple of these contenders, is the Boston College Eagles. I love quarterback who's returning from an injury last season. He started the season, missed a few games, or came back late. I love quarterback Phil Jurkovec, and I love Coach Jeff Hafley. I like what they've got going on there at Chestnut Hill. So watch for Boston College to be that chaos-causing team, if not that overall dark horse to win the division title there in the Atlantic. So that is what I've got for the Atlantic Division in the ACC. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Now let's move to the Coastal Division of the ACC. I think this is a two-team race. This is going to come down to Miami and Pittsburgh. So let's start off with number 16, Miami in the AP poll. Quarterback Tyler Van Dyke leads a potential dynamic, high-powered offense. This team is going to put up points, but it really comes down to how quickly will they hit the ground running. They have to replace Coach Manny Diaz, and they did. They lost him in the offseason with former Oregon head coach Mario Cristobal. So for me, that's an absolute upgrade in coaching and head coach and the staff. But via their schedule, they have a tougher, or the toughest path to the division title. They host Pittsburgh and Florida State, but they travel to Clemson and Virginia to face a very tough quarterback attack in the Cavaliers. So Miami, they just have to kind of prove it. I mean, I think this absolutely will be the easier of the two divisions in the ACC. And both Miami and Pitt really kind of lucked out with their crossover games from the Atlantic. So we'll see. Next is number 17 is Pittsburgh. Offense, they must replace Heisman Trophy finalist from a year ago, quarterback Kenny Pickett, and wide receiver Jordan Addison, who was the best wide receiver in the nation last season. Jordan Addison has transferred in the offseason, late in the offseason, to USC to join Coach Lincoln Riley on the West Coast. So they have a lot of firepower to replace. But enter USC transfer quarterback Keaton Slovis. So a proven quarterback. We'll see if, obviously he doesn't have to be the next Kenny Pickett, but just stop the bleeding. Be productive, be efficient, and keep the offensive train going there at Pittsburgh. What I like about the Panthers is you can expect, because it's Coach Pat Narduzzi, his calling card, a very tough, physical, and aggressive defense. They return a lot on the defensive side of the football and a lot along the offensive line. Via the schedule, compared to Miami, they have the easier path to a division title. They do travel to Virginia and Miami, and that's really it. They host everybody else. They have two tough games, at Miami, at Virginia. So the potential chaos-causing or surprise team or sleeper team in the ACC Coastal is Virginia, and awesome, vaunted quarterback Brennan Armstrong, who put up buku numbers last season. And if you look at the ACC as a whole, I mean, this is gonna be the best quarterback conference this year in the nation, with Brennan Armstrong, DJ Uyunglele, Sam Hartman, hopefully, Devin O'Leary at NC State, Tyler Van Dyke at Miami, Phil Jurkovic at Boston College. Just quarterback play up the wazoo there in the ACC. So that's how I see the two divisions playing out. Let me give you my conference games of the year. I'll give each conference 2 games. And these games, I think, will determine overall who meets in the conference title game. The first one is November 26th, the last game of the year. And how fitting is this in the final week of the regular season? Pittsburgh travels to Miami. Love that matchup. I think that is going to determine who wins the Coastal Division on the last week of the year. And the second game is October 1st, and there's a lot of big dates, a lot of big games on October 1st. NC State travels to Clemson. And that game does have not just ACC Atlantic implications, but playoff implications as well. So those are my 2 big conference games of the season. Now, my overall prediction, who is going to meet in the ACC title game? I have Clemson winning the Atlantic, and sort of a surprise, I like Pittsburgh to repeat as the Coastal Division. So Clemson versus Pitt, and overall, the winner of the ACC this season and advancing to the college football playoff, I've got the Clemson Tigers. Let me know what you think, agree, disagree, and we'll see how this plays out. All right, next up on the docket, let's stop right in the central region of the nation. Let's go ahead and move into the Big 12 Conference. So let's see how I predict the Big 12 playing out. I think the Big 12 is going to be a 4-team race, alphabetically, between Baylor, Oklahoma, surprisingly TCU, and Texas. So let's go ahead and start off with number 10, Baylor, in the initial AP poll. They are the defending Big 12 champions, but they have to replace their entire wide receiver core and their entire defensive backfield. I mean, they lose a lot on this team. I love what Coach Dave Aranda has done there. Mr. Stoic, solid, face never seems to show any emotion. I love what he's established there. I mean, you're not going to see Dave Aranda break out much of a smile. He's not going to be a smiling Bob from the, I think it was Viagra, maybe the Insight commercials. He's not going to be a smiling Bob. Okay, that's not going to happen with Coach Dave Aranda. But I just think they have so much to replace, it's going to be tough for them. They lose quarterback Jerry Bohannon, who did transfer in the offseason, and his 27 total touchdowns. They have to replace that. And via the schedule, they have the toughest path to get to the Big 12 title game. Now remember, if you're unaware, as a refresher, the Big 12 does not have divisions. Every team plays each other, but Baylor has the toughest path to the title game. They do host Oklahoma State and TCU, but they travel to both Oklahoma and Texas. Yikes. Tough schedule, tough break there for Baylor, but we'll see what they can do. Next is number 9, Oklahoma. And as you are hearing, I do not consider Oklahoma a legitimate playoff contender. Here's why. Now, I'm not saying they can and won't win the Big 12, but hear me out. So Oklahoma returns only 8 starters from last year's football squad. They have to replace quarterbacks Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler, both of those studs who were both highly recruited and did prove themselves on the field that they could ball out when given the right circumstance. I mean, last year, the Oklahoma offensive line just horrid. I mean, just bad when Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams are running for their lives half of the time. So they lose both of those experienced, highly touted quarterbacks, and Coach Lincoln Riley, as I mentioned, took his talents to LA and now is at USC. So how do they replace that? They bring in UCF transfer quarterback Dylan Gabriel, who has a lot of experience, and former Clemson defensive coordinator Brent Venables is now the new head coach. He returns to his roots at Oklahoma as the next head football coach of the Sooners. So that's how they replaced those areas of need. Now, via the schedule, they do have a little bit of an easier path to the Big 12 title game. They do host Baylor and Oklahoma State, and they travel to TCU, and as usual, they play rival Texas at a neutral site in the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. So overall, a little bit of an easier path for them to get to the Big 12 title game. We'll see how it plays out for number 9, Oklahoma. Now, TCU, a team that I am really, really high on. And here's why. I think they're going to make some noise in the Big 12. They return 14 starters, their entire wide receiver core, and 4 out of their top 5 rushers return, and uber gamer quarterback Max Duggan. I mean, this guy gets it done. I mean, pass, rushing. He just seems to always have a lot in the tank. But we'll see if that's going to be enough. They do need to replace, and they did, their longtime head football coach, Gary Patterson, an absolute living legend. He has a statue in front of the stadium. And they did with offensive guru, Coach Sonny Dykes. So a little bit of a change in sort of calling cards or culture, but I think TCU has enough in place that Sonny Dykes is not going to completely uproot what's already there and established. I think he will work with it and try to work in a little bit of his own style of play at TCU. Now, via the schedule, tough path to the Big 12 title game. They do host Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Both of the Oklahoma teams travel to Dallas-Fort Worth, but they travel to Texas and to Baylor. So it's going to be tough sledding for TCU this season to get to the Big 12 title game. Now, last is Texas. Now, this year at Texas, they have high expectations, especially following a 5-7 campaign last season, which included a 6-game conference losing streak at the middle and near the end of the season. And there is pressure and heat that is rising on second-year coach Steve Sarkisian. So he needs to have a good result down there in Austin, or he could be shown the door very early on in his career. Now, they do have a potential for a very dynamic backfield in either combination of quarterback, whether it be Hudson Card or Quinn Ewers, and man-child running back Bijan Robinson. I mean, Bijan Robinson, one of my dark horse Heisman candidates. I believe he is the best running back in the nation. I mean, this guy is a bruiser. But I have issues along their offensive line. Are they going to be able to hold up, hold the point of attack, give those quarterbacks some time to throw, go through those progressions? Are they going to be able to open up some holes for Bijan Robinson to rush through and take advantage of? We'll have to wait and see. Via the schedule, they have the easiest path of the teams I've mentioned to get to the Big 12 title game. They do host TCU and Baylor, and they travel to Oklahoma State. They go to Stillwater. And just like Oklahoma, they do play their annual rivalry game, the Red River rivalry, in the Cotton Bowl neutral site in Dallas against the Sooners. So that's the four main contenders I have in the Big 12 this season. Now my potential chaos-causing team, the surprise team, or ultimate sleeper is number 12 Oklahoma State. I mean, they do return a lot, but they do lose their stud defensive coordinator, Knowles, to Ohio State. I think that'll be a big-time loss for this program. So I think they will be a solid team, but I don't see them necessarily winning or getting to the Big 12 title game. So my two conference games of the year in the Big 12 conference that will decide who ultimately plays in the Big 12 title game. I have, once again, October 1st, Oklahoma travels to TCU. Huge game on the opening weekend in October. And then 1 week later, on October 8th, that neutral site annual rivalry game, Oklahoma and Texas in the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. So those are my two biggest conference games this year in the Big 12. Now let me unveil to you my prediction. Who is going to reach the Big 12 title game? I believe it's going to be Oklahoma. And big surprise, I like TCU to match wits with Oklahoma in the Big 12 title game. Now, my prediction, I think Oklahoma will find a way to win. Brent Venables will bring a strong defense, which that's what's been missing at Oklahoma. And I think the difference maker, I believe UCF transfer quarterback to Oklahoma, Dylan Gabriel, will end up being the best overall quarterback in the Big 12. And I think that's going to be a instant classic between Oklahoma and TCU, but I do like Oklahoma to find a way to win the Big 12. That's my prediction for the Big 12. Like, share, review, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you think. Now, finally, let's move on to the artist formerly known as the Pac-12. A lot of upheaval right now, a lot of uncertainty with USC and UCLA moving to the Big Ten and beginning of the 2024 season. So let's look at the Pac-12 and how I see it playing out. I believe this is going to be a three-team race in the Pac-12 between Oregon, USC, and Utah. Now remember, there still are, this season there are divisions in the Pac-12, but it's really just for scheduling purposes only. The two teams with the highest conference winning percentage and head-to-heads will match wits and meet up in the Pac-12 title game. Let me get a little drink here. Pardon me for 1 second. I'm getting a little... So that's why it's not necessarily going to be winner of the Pac-12 North or South in the Pac-12 title game. So it's these three teams is what I believe is going to come down to. So first of all, let's break down number 11, Oregon, the Ducks. They lost head coach Mario Cristobal, who went to Miami in the offseason, but they replaced him with former Georgia defensive coordinator Dan Lanning. I mean, Dan Lanning, very successful. We all know how vaunted that Georgia defense was last season and during his time down there in Athens between the hedges. So I think this is a good hire. I think overall he's going to keep the physicality there at Oregon. So I'm okay with the hire, but we'll have to wait and see, give it a few years to see just how well it's going to pay off there in Eugene. They do return 14 starters, does Oregon, and they add Auburn transfer quarterback Bo Nix, who does have big play potential, but also can be a little bit erratic and a little bit too much seat of the pants occasionally. So we'll wait to see if this is the year that he really can bring it all together, so to speak, quarterback Bo Nix. Expect physicality on both lines of scrimmage. This is a team that really can stand up with any team in the nation. Last year, that was the main reason why they were able to travel to the Horseshoe last year and upset Ohio State, because they did win the battle along the lines of scrimmage. They will be physical, even though they lost stud defensive end Tavon Thibodeau to the NFL. One of the best and most experienced offensive lines in college football. So that is going to be potentially the great equalizer for the Oregon Ducks. Via the schedule, they have the easiest path to the title game amongst the contenders. They do host Utah, and they do travel to Oregon State. They don't play USC, which I think benefits them absolutely. Next is number 14 USC, and once again, I did not say that either Oregon, and I'm not going to say USC is a legitimate playoff contender to me. So once again, I'm not going to mention that. And I already said I am not jumping on the USC bandwagon because, quite frankly, I'm not on dope, as Mr. Hand would say. Now, during the season, they got rid of longtime coach and battled coach Clay Helton, and they did replace him with former Oklahoma head coach Lincoln Riley, as I've already mentioned several times this episode. And I absolutely love the hire of Lincoln Riley. I mean, Oklahoma won the offseason, not just the offseason, but also I think moving forward. I think also LSU is right there with the hire of Coach Brian Kelly, former head coach at Notre Dame. But I'll talk more about that during next week's SEC preview and predictions episode. And USC won the transfer portal in the offseason by bringing in wide receiver Mario Williams from Oklahoma and quarterback Caleb Williams, also for Oklahoma, followed Lincoln Riley to USC. And they did hire when the roundabout way it is hire. It is sort of like players for hire. It is free agency. But they did add wide receiver from Pitt, Jordan Addison, and running back Travis Dye from Oregon. So they did add a lot of pieces on the offense, a lot of firepower there at USC. And Hefe, would you say Oklahoma has a plethora of offensive playmakers? I would say yes. USC has a plethora. And they do. Gotta love the Three Amigos. So I love the Three Amigos, but yes, USC has a plethora of potential playmakers on offense. I mean, you're looking at an offense that really could be, hey, name your score. I mean, it could come down to that. But I question their physicality, and I think there's just way too many holes and gaps to still fill on this team in year one of the Lincoln Riley project. I do believe moving forward they will be legitimate annual playoff contenders, but just not this season. I mean, and Lincoln Riley is going to have to start preparing and playing big boy football. If you haven't noticed, the Pac-12 is getting way more physical. The teams that are having success, especially in the recent past, are teams that are physical. Utah, Oregon, UCLA, even Oregon State, teams that are physical on the lines of scrimmage. And sorry, no offense, no disrespect, Lincoln Riley, but playing in the Big 12, it's not really known for physical play on defense or along the lines of scrimmage. So I definitely think he's going to need to adapt and stack that on both sides of the line and on defense to really be a legitimate playoff contender year in and year out. I mean, the Pac-12, way more physical than the Big 12, but still behind the SEC and the Big Ten. I mean, it's big boy football time now, okay? So that's the questions I have for USC. Via the schedule, they have the toughest path of the contenders to reach the Pac-12 title game. They have to travel to Utah, to inner-city rival UCLA in the Rose Bowl, and travel to Corvallis to play Oregon State. So very tough. I mean, they don't play Oregon, but still, their schedule is no cakewalk. Next is the last of the contenders in the Pac-12 via me is number 7 Utah, and I do have them as a legitimate playoff contender. Utah, they are the defending Pac-12 champions. They return 13 starters. They do lose a couple studs on the defensive side of the ball, but seriously, 13 starters, there's safety in numbers with that. Their calling card and culture will continue to be physicality, and physicality, as established by longtime head coach Kyle Whittingham, another one of those coaches in college football, very highly underrated, unknown, and underappreciated. Quarterback Cameron Rising, he's going to be the ultimate catalyst to this team. He was given the reins early last season as the starting quarterback moving forward. And once that happened, once the change happened at Utah, they did go 9-2 with him at the helm. I mean, it was rough starting. I believe Utah started last season 1-2. And if Cameron Rising is the starter the entire season, maybe they find themselves in last year's playoff field. Just a lot of what ifs, but looking back, we can't change it now, but let's focus on this season. So we'll see what Cameron Rising can do, that stud quarterback. And I expect big things out of Cameron Rising and the two Utes. Via the schedule, it's a little bit tough. They do host USC and Oregon State, but they do travel to Oregon. So that's going to be a tough game. It's going to be physical versus physical. Who will come out winning? It's like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. 2 teams enter, 1 team leaves. So my potential chaos, surprise, or sleeper team in the Pac-12 is the Oregon State Beavers. I love what they've got going there in Corvallis. They're building a culture. They have an identity, and I think they're going to be a tough out. So keep your eyes on Oregon State. Now, my 2 conference games of the year in the Pac-12, I have first on September 24th, USC travels to Oregon State to take on the Beavers. I love that game. I think that is a potential must-win for USC if they want to make the Pac-12 title game. And I think the second game of conference in the Pac-12, November 19th, Utah travels to Oregon. Not just Pac-12 title game implications, but absolute playoff implications in this game. So that's going to be one of the biggest games of the year in all of college football. Can't wait for that one in Eugene. Now, my prediction, as far as who will reach the Pac-12 title game, I like Oregon versus Utah. I like that rematch a few weeks later. I think that's going to be an epic first meeting with an epic second game in the Pac-12 title game. And my prediction, I do like Utah to repeat as Pac-12 champions. And I do predict, and I do think and predict and know that they will then advance to the college football playoff field. So that's how I see the Pac-12 playing out this season. Once again, like, share, subscribe, comment, let me know what you think. So that's it for today's episode 1 of 2 of my conference previews and predictions. Next week, what's on the docket? I will conclude my conference previews and predictions next week for both teams and individuals. I will have conference previews, predictions for the SEC and the Big Ten. But also, I will give you who I think will ultimately capture this year's Heisman Trophy, and I will let you know which team will hoist the National Championship Trophy this season. And if you watch my bold predictions episode, I did give you who I believe the 4 playoff teams and my Heisman Trophy finalist would be near the end and at the end of the season. Also, next week's episode, I'm going to give you my top 5 non-conference games of the entire season. These games will absolutely mold the eventual college football playoff participants. And via the initial AP poll that was released just a couple days ago, I will give you my reactions, a few teams that I believe are overrated, and a few teams that are underrated in the AP poll. So that's it. So I look forward to next week. Look out for next week's episode. And as always, thank you for your time, your support, everything from this episode. And I can't wait for more. Please comment, share, like, subscribe. Let me know what you think. And be on the lookout for next week's episode. So I thank you very much for being with me today on this very special episode of the Touchdown Black and Gold vlog. Until next week, peace, prosperity, take care of yourselves. See you soon. All right, take care. Bye-bye.